Addiction. You know, if one can wield their willpower strongly enough, one can quit an addiction by willpower alone. And of course, it is good to exercise, strengthen, focus, sharpen your willpower because that can affect so many areas in life positively. But there's a deeper layer which overpowering addiction with willpower doesn't address or heal, and that's really the root cause. And from what I can tell through experience and observation, addictions they stem from a trauma. They tie back into a trauma somewhere or multiple traumas. Some of you are probably quite aware of certain traumas that you have and where they came from, and this is good. You need that awareness if you're going to address it. And yet others will wonder, do I have any trauma? Is that why I have addiction tendencies? I don't remember a reason. Nobody beat me up. I didn't get in a bad car crash. I didn't go to a war. Um, I can't remember. I can't figure out why I would have trauma. You may be thinking something like that. And if that's you, it'd be a little trickier, more of an introspective process to come to understand it. But what I would suggest is that in many cases, what people don't realize is that their root philosophy of life that they've been given or picked up is very damaging to the nervous system. I don't think I'm going to get into that a whole lot in this video because that's a really deep topic and it's probably pretty far out and fringy for a lot of people to start looking into. To realize that beliefs are like codes that do things to your DNA, that do things to your subconscious or your superconscious and totally affect your life. And a lot of people have absorbed whatever their belief system is for life without ever critically analyzing it because most of these were picked up at a very young age and they haven't been questioned. And upon very close examination about each thing you believe and why, it can become quite apparent that some of the things that most people believe are incredibly harmful and destructive. And this can come from a lot of different backgrounds. It's not like planet Earth in recent known history or even further back has been handing out good root philosophies of life. It really hasn't. Now, if you're the exception to that, good for you and that's awesome. But for most people, that's not the case. Even most people who think they have a really good belief system or philosophy of life and they haven't questioned it. But to not get too far into that issue, because this video is really about healing from and overcoming addiction. The point is that, from what I can tell, and this, I'm sure it's not every single case of addiction ever, but it seems to me the majority are coming from a trauma of sorts. And, people often think of substance abuse because that's an obvious addiction, and that's a huge category of it. But there's other things, porn addiction. A lot of people have asked me for help with this. And when I addressed it before in a video, it was more about willpower and clarity and righteousness and things like that, more of a motivational speech about it. But this one's more about whether it's porn addiction or substance abuse or gambling or whatever you find yourself addicted to, um, because addiction can take so many different forms. Even if it's a healthy addiction, let's talk about that. I have some healthy addictions. A long time ago, when I couldn't figure out how to address the root cause of addictions, I just started converting addictions into better addictions, and some of them are actually quite productive. And that's good. That's good to transfer an addictive tendency into something productive. It really is. But it doesn't it didn't and doesn't address the root cause still, and it doesn't create the healing. So, without going into a bunch of specific examples of how you might be traumatized, if you're aware of trauma that you carry or tendencies, some version of going back in time within yourself and validating the feelings of your inner child when it was not understood or listened to, and making your inner child feel safe and appreciated. And when I say appreciated, I mean really appreciated, like seeing that you are an extension of the ultimate creator, God, source, something perfect and divine, and you're an expression of it. And even if you get muddied up in this world, it doesn't take away the fact that you're a divine expression. Go find your inner child and treat your inner child that way, okay? From a much more enlightened state, from your own future, okay? Be the change that's needed. Be what was needed and what still is, because that's the interesting thing about this process. This is one form of time travel that actually works. You can actually go back to your earlier self inside of you, where time is recorded or the illusion thereof, and you can be everything for your own inner child that was needed. And as you're going through this process, who's more qualified than you to do that, right? You'll know you're succeeding, or you'll know you're making a difference when you notice that the addiction doesn't have as much of a hold. But let's talk about another thing that's needed here. If you're going to go back and be there for your past inner child self, or even your current inner child self, really, because regardless of where you are on a timeline, you still have an inner child. So if you're going to do this, and if you're going to make your inner child feel safe, and that's one of the key things here, a lack of safety of some sort is always related to the traumas that we pick up in life. And of course, when you're very young and dependent and you don't have any strength towards independence yet, any lack of safety is profound as far as how you develop in your own nervous system. And that's where this is coming from. It's the nervous system that needs healing. And that ties to the emotions and thoughts and physical functions and various other things. But if you're going to do this, you are going to need to make sure that whatever is the cause of the trauma, the root of it, is something that you can put yourself now, if you haven't yet, you can put yourself in safety, with boundaries away from whatever it is. In other words, if the very thing that caused the traumas is still active in your life now, even though you're an adult, your inner child will still be shaking deep inside. Even if adult you's like, well, that's silly. I'm a big man or woman. I don't have to be afraid of that, which is fine and logically true, but it won't matter to your inner child. If the element that caused the trauma is still in your life, the inner child can't shake it because the inner child is still shaking in anticipation of the next trauma from that source. So, really, for the healing to be effective, for you to be able to be there for yourself in a way that makes your inner child finally safe and unconditionally loved and appreciated, you're also going to need to remove the root cause from your life. And this is probably, in many cases, the bigger challenge here. And if it's not good, if you're far from whatever caused the instability in your nervous system and the unsafeness that you carry as anxiety or depression or anger or all the above, whatever uncomfortable feelings that your addiction or addictions help you temporarily get away from, if you're far from it, if you're far from the cause good, just work on giving your inner child that stability and that safety and that unconditional love. And watch how the power, so-called, of an addiction starts losing its power. I am speaking from experience, finally, on this one. One of, if not the most destructive addictions in my life is finally not pulling at me for the first time in my life, just this year. And I found that it's because I removed the connection to the root cause of it, really. And and just like that, an addiction that used to have such a strong pull, something I enjoyed, even if it was harmful to me, it just doesn't appeal anymore. In my case, I'm talking about alcohol. I don't need to be too mysterious about it. It's a common one. Many people can relate. I would go years and years without a drink sometimes, but then for whatever reason, when it was just too uncomfortable and I didn't know what else to do, I would dive into a bottle and and overdo it, to say the least. So it's best for me just not to touch such things. And all of a sudden, that's easy. It's just really easy all of a sudden. And Being that I had done so many other things and I had overpowered addictions many times with just willpower, but the root cause was always there. So if I felt like going back to a bottle, it was always a nice thing to go back to. And now it wouldn't be. Now I would just be like, why am I making myself have a hangover tomorrow? This doesn't sound fun at all. At all. It has no appeal for the first time because the program that was running in my nervous system that made me so uneasy all the time and pushed my stress over the red line on a regular basis has been removed. The program's been removed. Now I can still tell that the nervous system itself is resorting and recalibrating and recalculating life for the first time in a new way. And that process may take some time and some ups and downs. But the desire to leave this realm of consciousness, at least temporarily, in order to not feel the instability of the nervous system haunting me, that's not there anymore, which is interesting um, and very powerful. So finally, I have an answer to you guys. I've been thinking about it. I wanted to say some things, and I could have said some of this, but just this year, I was really experiencing something and putting it together and observing it and experiencing, well, I already said that, but yeah, experiencing it some more and thinking about it and pondering it and noticing changes and analyzing it a bit. And I got to this point where I really wanted to share that. I don't think any of this is unknown knowledge. I'm sure there are people that specialize in going back and giving stability and healing and unconditional love and appreciation to your inner child. Um, I'm sure there's processes for this that are well documented and functional and successful. And if you'd like help with that, you should probably look for somebody with good reviews and in helping walk people through a process like that. But the other keynote I wanted to throw in, which maybe some of these healers include, I would think so. I would think the good ones would include this, but it occurred to me through my own experience recently that you got to make sure you're removing that root cause from your life. Because, like I say, even now, if the adult you rationalizes that it's not a problem anymore, that's not going to work for your inner child. Your inner child will always be shaking in fear if it doesn't sense true actual safety and a complete boundary between itself and whatever caused that trauma. So it's very interesting that even though you can't actually go back and stop those things from happening to your inner child, you can actually be the source of what your inner child needs and reprogram and create that safety and that boundary to where now your inner child can join you in a reality that you've made safe for your inner child, which is interesting and wonderful. It's really very rich and profound to experience the fact that as one human being, you have all these different types of layers and dimensions to you, including things like an inner child, an inner adult, an inner youth, an inner parent, an inner grandparent, an inner guru, some would say, an inner this and an inner that. We have these things, we have these different layers, these functions within us, these archetypes within us, you know. Um, and you can use one to heal another if you know you can. A little more about the root beliefs. If you have beliefs that you're examining, I would throw this in here. If you've never examined your root philosophy of life, or you don't even know what I'm referring to there, do a little research, understand the definition, and try to figure out what your root philosophy of life is and where it comes from. And you will find that in most cases, the things people have been programmed with is their root philosophy of life, even in many cases by well-meaning individuals or institutions, are profoundly destructive to the human nervous system. And great wisdom can come from recognizing that and recognizing why a certain thing would be greatly destructive and correcting the pattern within you, replacing it with a healthy belief. Your inner child didn't, your child self didn't have any filters. Your child self came from a realm of unconditional love and perfection and was shocked to be entering a realm like this where it isn't like that. and also being given a new human brain as an infant or a baby, and being conditioned to socialization among humans on Earth, you didn't have any filters for whatever it is that is now your inner philosophy of life, unless you've already done some work and changed this at a more adult, aware perspective. And this is really what I'm recommending here. For those of you that sense that that may be the main root of the trauma, um, I would wager that the vast, vast majority of humans on this planet would do well to make an effort to go back and question what you've been handed, what's been passed to you as a root philosophy of life, what you've absorbed, what's running in your subconscious or superconscious. Because all those things in the subconscious and superconscious are actually a lot larger energy field than the conscious human mind. So when you ask yourself, like, why is it that I always set out to do this and I always undermine myself, or I always quit, or I always hit this brick wall and I just can't follow through? Well, this is why. Because the subconscious or superconscious, and there's probably other terms for it, is all this information and ideas and beliefs and concepts that exist within you that you're not really consciously aware of, at least most of the time. They're the things you don't think about consciously that have an even larger effect on what's going on in your life. So that is what I had for you guys today, the things that hit me. In some cases, it might be pretty obvious what the cause of the trauma was, and you're going to have to face it and deal with it and make sure there's a very clear boundary so your inner child can actually believe you when you tell them that it's okay now to feel fully safe. Because if you tell them that and what's hurting them is still in their life and in your life, it's almost like you're not going to build good trust with your own inner child, right? So whatever you're telling them that you've made it safe, there needs to be integrity behind what you're saying. It needs to be for real. The adult you needs to create the actual boundaries to make sure that the inner child is safe from what caused the harm long ago. Now, obviously, you can't create boundaries against every harmful thing now in your life, but now you're an adult. It's different. You have a better chance of not being as traumatized by things that come up now, whereas as a child, you really didn't. So those root causes need to be corrected. They need to be removed so the inner child can believe you when you tell yourself that you're safe at that younger age, at that vulnerable state. Because the inner child part of you is forever an inner child. It's forever dependent. And now it's going to depend on you. Now you're going to provide it with what it needed. This is great wisdom. This is humanity attempting to wake up a little more and become, what is the right word for it? To advance in some way, let's say, as a species. This kind of work that one can do to themselves and needs to. Um, so that's what I submit to you guys. It's fine if, in fact, it's constructive and good. If in the meantime, you're dealing with addictions just by overcoming them with willpower, that's really good, like I say. But a lot of people can't figure out why they just can't muster the willpower to do so. And I'd suggest that this is why. There's something much bigger going on in your subconscious that's wired your nervous system to interact with this reality a certain way. And until those things are changed, even if you do overpower one addiction, the addictive tendencies and the anxiety, the depression, the anger, the fear, the frustration, whatever negative feelings are tied to it, they'll still be haunting you. And so it's good and all to be strong, and it's good to overpower an addiction despite any discomfort. But this is like the next step. This is the deeper layer. This is a bigger opportunity. Let's go back and actually heal what caused it. And it's interesting because this kind of wisdom, if humans start practicing this kind of thing, and it eventually even became common, let's say, in a more utopian reality, uh, you'd have a lot less of the kind of ignorance that has people judging each other for their addictions, wouldn't you? If humanity was a more enlightened species and this was just common knowledge that you need healing and there's processes for it to free you from addictions, you wouldn't have these prideful, abusive people harping on, blaming on, judging, and condemning and making others feel smaller than themselves for their addictions. Even though in most cases those same people have plenty of addictions they're in denial of or blind to. So this is a good step, and I wanted to share that with you guys because you've asked me many times what to do about addictions, man. And I hear you guys, and I wanted to help sooner. With a lot of time and experience, I've learned that the part of me that's very impulsive and jumps into things bravely and is willing to learn the hard way, that part's good and all. But there's another part that's like, you know what? Um, we don't have to make so many lessons be the hard way. Sometimes it's better to slow down and sit with it a little bit and relax and not feel like, the world is going to end if you don't hurry up and answer a question. See, that's hypervigilance disorder. That's a condition I got from certain traumas. And it's been largely helpful with getting a lot done in life, but it's sort of self abusive, you know. So, one thing I'm noticing changing with me is that having done some actual breakthrough work this year, yes, I can still work very hard. And yes, I am still very productive. But I notice now that there's much less of that rushing, racing, and hurrying up to achieve things almost like there's an emergency all the time. That if I don't get enough done fast enough, there's going to be some terrible consequence. That goes back to an inner child trauma. And my inner child apparently feels safe about that now, that you're not going to suddenly be attacked if you didn't get enough done fast enough. And that there's more to life than just work style productivity. There's actually more balance, there's more holisticness coming into my reality. And I'm learning to work with it better, which is much healthier. And really, I highly suspect that in the long run, I'll end up getting just as much done, but through different means, and means that don't involve being in a frantic, extremely uptight, impatient, stressed out scramble with any task that I engage in, which has generally been kind of the way I go about things. It's becoming more and more evident to me as that energy is backing off. That's just something I can share, another thing I'm noticing changing. But it really is amazing that you can go back and change some of the math, in this case, inner child healing, and it entirely changes what's going on in your nervous system that's leading to most, if not all, of your addictions, or just that one you may have. So I love you guys, and I'm glad I finally had something to share on that. Taking it further than willpower, taking it further than overpowering it. And let's go back to actually heal the root cause, because that's going to have a lot of profound benefits in your life, not just an easier time letting go of addictions that used to seem so powerful, but they're really not. The power is not in the addiction or the substance or the activity. The power is in your own nervous system. And if you realign it to where it's not working against you, that power gets converted into positive outcomes. And you're more than worth it, my friends, my fellow divine expressions. Much love. Over and out for now.